Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A. This is season 3, episode 20. Getting into the first question comes from Kemi Muhammad, and they say, "Hi, may I ask if I put damage and health augment in Red Sun Superman, will that make the multiplayer enemies harder?"
So we answered this in the comments originally with just a quick yes, but I think it's maybe worth rehashing a bit more detail, right?
Yeah, and maybe more generally how online matchups happen, so we can talk about some stuff that doesn't affect it
Because some things are more obvious to me, and so I take it for granted, but I also know that it seems like there's always new people coming on board, and it probably this fight is not worth fighting, so let's not waste our energy on something that won't give us a lot of battle points. Anyways, even though we're just grinding. All right, so health and damage are the two crucial things. They are the biggest part of what determines how difficult your opponents will be. So anything that affects health and damage, whether it's augmentations, support cards, and passives, which is what some people forget sometimes.
And that makes sense, because those were the original stats that you really could actually measure, right?
Right.
When multiplayer was introduced. And so that's how they actually do the calculations to make the matchups. It seems like a combination of the two mostly.
Now, this may not be as intuitively obvious, or maybe it is actually, but it doesn't count as just damage if it affects only basic or it affects only your specials or supers.
It has to be all type, like always damage. It has to be regardless of what happens, no matter what, from the start of the fight to the end of the fight, extra damage the whole way through on everything.
Right. So, as an example, the basic damage with crit chance gears, those don't actually hurt you because your enemies don't scale up.
Yeah, because it's not 100% of the time.
Now, the best example of it not being useful is with the original Darkseid, because his passive will enhance bronzes, both attack and damage, and you get 0 benefit because your enemies scale up. Because you'd think that would be a great way, right? You keep your Darkseid weak, you scale up your bronzes, and easy fights? No.
But it takes into account the scaled up stats because it's health and damage all the time.
Right.
It's a permanent effect for the fight, so it actually takes that into account in the processing.
Now, honestly, the best test for whether it's going to help you or not is actually take them into fight. And you'll notice when you're actually fighting that certain augmentations make fights easier. A big example here would be crits, whether it's crit chance or crit damage boost. And other augmentations are neutral or maybe even making it tougher. And the reason why I say that, so if you scale up just your attack, like the way we fight, we're going all offensive, right?
Yeah.
And if your enemy scales up in stats, that's actually not bad if they have to balance it between attack and health, damage and health, because it'll actually, in my mind, it makes my fights easier.
Yeah, it makes the fights a little faster because you're dealing proportionally more damage per hit of their health.
Right. And that's why the Flashpoint team is so deadly, because the destructive blows, which are huge, right, where they do twice the critical damage, it's all crit damage, so it doesn't count. So you've got a huge advantage over the kind of opponents you normally face with the kind of stats that they've got. And
that's actually, it's an advantage to scale up their damage there, because when you're gearing them up a certain way, when they're fulfilling a certain team role, sometimes it does make sense if they're a health or a tank. If they're a tank or a basic damage dealer or a special specialist, to boost one or the other but not both, so that you can make them like a lot better at doing what they do for their stat level, comparatively. So there we go. But we in general just don't, because it's easier to not have to think about that, because then you kind of have to slot them into one role forever. It's a big commitment.
Right.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Adam G, and they say, "I've been wondering this for a while, but why don't people use Regime Killer Frost over Prime Killer Frost, or use them together against a Fourth World set?"
Interesting question, and I think it would definitely have been more relevant a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago. So
I think the small bit of it is that you can't always guarantee that you're fighting against a Fourth World set. It's only some of the time. So saying why people don't use it against the Fourth World set is, I guess, why don't people put more Fourth World sets on their gear, on their guys?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's a little bit of it. It's not, you don't always fight a Fourth World set. You don't fight a Fourth World set a lot of the time.
Yeah. The basic principle. All right, so I guess I should, for the people who don't have them and don't know, Regime Killer Frost will slow down healing, decrease healing by 90% or something, and Killer Frost Prime will decrease power generation. So decreasing the other team's healing isn't as important as decreasing the other team's power generation, right? And like you said, not all teams that you're facing focus on healing. And after the Fourth World Gear set was nerfed, so that the healing that it does is a lot less than before, it's not nearly as important. It doesn't become so hard to overcome.
I mean, you look at the team we're fighting right now, they barely have any gear. They have like some gear on one guy, that's it.
Right. So if you put Regime Killer Frost on it, right, you've got a slaughtering team filled with somebody who has limited offensive potential because she's one of the lower damage golds. And her passive often has no impact on a fight. And, you know, I guess you could use her as a tank. But I always like to have, if they're going to fulfill a role, I like them to have some potential for other stuff. Now, so compare Regime Killer Frost with Killer Frost. She decreases power generation, and power generation is a factor in every single fight, right? And here's another way to look at it. Even when you're facing a team with Fourth World Gear set, they'll need to use a special to heal. So Killer Frost Prime decreases healing because less power, fewer specials, less healing, right?
That's true.
So
unless it's a combo ender.
Right? I guess so. That's I don't know. Does that count as healing if it's a life drain?
I'm not 100% sure.
That's the gauntlets, right? You're talking about.
That's true.
Okay.
I don't think it's actually come up where I've noticed it. If it has.
So she has an effect on healing specials, but she also has an effect on every other non-healing specials. They'll just do less of them, right?
Yeah.
And Regime Killer Frost only has an effect on specials that heal. So, and I guess answering this question made me think of sort of the bigger picture kind of stuff, right? I mean, sometimes if you have the benefit of full roster, you just play with the cards. If you're not sure, and it's, you know, you might have an idea of how to combine things, and you start off based on some theories about what do you think would fit well together. But playing it really gives you a better feel for where the problems or the shortcomings of that team might be, and then maybe adjusting the gear a little bit, or maybe adjusting the team composition. And then you just, you know, play. With Regime Killer Frost, and, you know, not unlike a lot of other cards that might seem good at first blush, when you play them, you'll quickly get a sense of how good or in this case how bad they are for your team, because there's so many other people I'd rather use than Regime Killer Frost. Like even like a dinky passive that would help, I don't know, like even that would only help herself, like say one of the Batman, I think it was Insurgency that won't which was the one that won't stun? Or is it Batman Beyond? Batman Beyond.
I'm not 100%
So I'd even almost rather have Batman Beyond, not the animated one, but the funny guy that looks like he's dressed up as a cartoon. He would be. I'd rather have him on the team just because he's got more potential to make a difference in the fight each time.
There we go.
Oh, I know that was your way of cutting me off, like at the Oscars where they start playing the music. But the other thing is, I can't remember if Regime Killer Frost was around when the healing gears. Remember when healing gears could stack, so that if you had 2 healing gears?
Oh, like right at the beginning of online multiplayer?
Yeah.
That was awful.
Yeah, right, because you'd have fights that would last literally forever. Not literally.
Like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Easily.
I should say figuratively forever. So, and you could still win those fights,
so
right?
long that they just were long past being fun.
But what was great was when you could sometimes play them back. And you could, if you could play long enough, you would reach the limit, and it would not, like, this was before when we still had playbacks, right?
Yeah.
And you could play, like, literally, like you were saying, 20 minutes. It was a challenge. And especially when people were hacking at the beginning, and they would hack more powerful gears, and more damage, and more health. So that was crazy. So back then, yeah, she was really useful. But not so much more now.
So there we go. Our next and final question comes from Cup, and just like their name, their question is similarly short and to the point. In your opinion, who's the worst Injustice character?
Oh, this is a great question.
It's also a hard question, I think.
Yeah, this is why I like it, because my feeling evolves over time, but not very far. And I think if I had to pick somebody, I would pick Boss Solomon Grundy.
I think I agree, not only in Boss Solomon Grundy as a specific, but in Solomon Grundys in general, for being the worst to play with. They don't feel great.
All right, so now you're talking about how slow they are and their offensive potential. But I gotta tell you, in my mind, in some ways, the bronze and silver Solomon Grundys might even be a little bit better because their passes where they resurrect, they can eat a super and still be standing.
That's true.
So they could eat 2 supers. If you play it right, you tag them in to take a lot of damage, and then you tag them back out.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with Boss Solomon Grundy...
And synergistic Solomon Grundys give you an opportunity to actually put them on a team and not use them and still get a lot of their benefit.
I guess that's
like
true.
Red Sun, Earth 2.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
Yeah, so they each have their own kind of thing that they offer.
Yeah. The problem with Boss Solomon Grundy, and he was worse before they fixed his passive, is that he would, in order to take advantage... All right, so he's so slow that his swipe combo is pretty much useless. So you have to do a tap combo, so you're doing half damage. He's not a high damage guy to start
Look, here's
with.
a Solomon Grundy right now.
A good one. This is one of the good ones. Yeah. Was that a full team?
Yeah.
Or not? Yeah, it's a... Oh, no.
No.
It's a... Oh, this is going to be interesting because it's nerfing the power generation. So it'll be fun to watch. All right. Because any other guy, I guess, if their stats are high enough and they're not crippled like that by being slow, they're okay. When he does the half... So you're basically starting with half damage by having to do tap combos. And then you have to be taking a huge amount of damage to up his damage, right? And I think his damage is not for specials, it's only for his basic attack. So what that means is that you're going to have to be riding the edge of really low health to take advantage of it. And there's a good chance because he's so slow, somebody's just going to drop in there and whack you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A nice double tap, and then he's dead.
So that means that a lot of the cases where you'd actually be able to use him, where he's at his most useful, he's also at his most vulnerable, which is not great.
Right. And he's going to eat up a slot. I mean, it'd be great. It'd be all right if he had a bunch of guys on the team. So that wasn't actually as hard as I thought.
If he was the secret 4th member.
Yeah. All right. So this is why this team is so good and balanced, because we saw Flashpoint Batman in a team where we're not facing a team where we're not going to generate a lot of power.
Yeah.
He takes on the hard job of doing a lot of the damage, right? Mm-hmm. So because there's not a lot of bronzes or silvers that are bad because they're bronzes and silvers.
That's true. At that level, you're just kind of, it's whatever you got.
Right.
And they're all okay.
Yeah, and as a class, I think Solomon Grundy is probably the worst. But again, even the bronze and silvers have something of value to add.
Yeah, because I think who else is pretty slow? Like Darkseid, right?
He's not that slow. He's not that slow. I think he's actually. I haven't played him a long time. He moves like Zod does.
That's true. He feels slow, but he's not.
He feels like he should be because he's so big.
Yeah, Doomsday. Doomsday is pretty slow, right?
2 hits. 2 hits. But the gold Doomsday's got a good passive where when he knocks somebody out, he gets health back, right?
Yeah, Doomsday really feels good to play as because he does feel like you're plodding along a little bit, but he feels like when you get somebody that they're down and you're really fresh.
Right. I mean, I used to think Prison Superman was pretty crappy because he's low stats, he's hard to get, so he's hard to promote. But, he's still got a nice one-hit special. He's got the nice rhythm that all the Supermen have. Supermen. Every time. And the golds that are lower stats are actually pretty good. Like Regime Black Adam, Elseworld Flash, Containment Doomsday. Those are some of our favorite guys to play because when you're playing multiplayer, and as long as your team's not imbalanced, they match up pretty well against the guys you're facing, and their passes are great.
Yeah, so there we go.
Boss Solomon Grundy, BSG.
That is the subjective worst character.
Yeah, so actually, if anybody else has an opinion about who they think is the worst, please let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear.
And tell us why it's Boss Solomon Grundy.
Yeah. And that was the fight. Good timing.
There we go. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.